Well, that's the issue, isn't it? Well, I guess we'll get into some of the medications now, just to bring them out and to explain the mechanistic view that was constructed to support the use of these drugs. But, okay, so the substantia nigra is part of the brain here that we're focusing on in Parkinson's that is the site of dopamine production. Now, dopamine, dopamine is... I think I understand this right, but I think the nervous system is pretty much wanting to be firing fairly constantly, and the dopamine actually controls that from happening ad hoc so that you don't get these sudden jerks, etc. And that dopamine allows, through this inhibition, the ordered movement of muscles in coordinated patterns. It's not a stimulant per se.
And well, it's integrated with the inhibiting systems. So
it's much more of a relaxant.
Yeah, in itself, it is an activator, but it runs into nerves that feedback with an inhibition.
Right. So when somebody, for example, I think L-DOPA is supposedly the gold standard, for want of a better word, of treatment, and that within 5 years, most patients using L-DOPA as the replacement for dopamine, because dopamine doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier as far as I know, but L-DOPA does, and within the brain, L-DOPA is converted into dopamine and then has an action directly. But the long-term effects of L-DOPA are a condition called bradykinesia, where there's involuntary movements like there is in a fine tremor, a resting tremor, because, again, there's a differentiation, I guess without getting too medical, there's a difference between intention tremors and resting tremors. So resting tremors are typically something you can see in the Parkinson's patients with either the leg tremoring or the hand tremoring in a pill-rolling fashion. I always remember this from studying, but they talk about pill-rolling tremor as one of the hallmark signs of classical Parkinson's. So supplying somebody with L-DOPA to treat that tremor does initially have a positive beneficial effect. But how is it, I wonder, that the administration of dopamine over a chronic period of 3, 4, 5 years actually causes worse symptoms than the tremor for which it was prescribed? And most patients that use L-DOPA are in worse shape 5 years down the road than they are if they weren't treated.
I think the problem is that the whole theory of what L-DOPA and dopamine are doing is mechanistic and mistaken.
So they're just patching. They're just putting a little Band-Aid on it. They're not treating the sensory input deficiency.
Another drug that is approved for use in Parkinson's is amantadine or memantine more recently. And in the 19th century, they were already using belladonna and hyoscyamine, anticholinergics, to treat the tremors. And they were pretty effective and didn't have the bad side effects of increasing rigidity and so on that L-DOPA does. It turns out that these amantadine and memantine have the anticholinergic, anti-excitatory effects, but they are also anti-excitatory in the glutamatergic system.
Right.
The glutamate and cholinergic systems are both very powerful excitatory, and the glutamate system ends up producing nitric oxide.
Okay.
And the amantadine and anticholinergics, memantine, are not only stopping the excitation that is part of the tremor, but they end up lowering the exposure to nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is a chronic stress-induced factor in suppressing mitochondrial respiration and energy production and accelerating aging of the brain. So using these approved drugs is it actually is giving insight into what's going on to a much more global organismic process rather than just restoring the lost so-called dopamine regulatory system. It's restoring energy processes, reducing the effects of stress in a systematic way.